They lied to you about what matters most in your later years. It's not money, it's not time, and it's definitely not staying busy. Charlie Munger, the legendary investor and right-hand man to Warren Buffett, knew the real secret. And if you're over 60, this just might flip the script on how you think about aging. See, Charlie lived to 99, not just existing, but living with clarity, purpose, and razor-sharp thinking. He didn't believe in wasting time with fluff. He was all about simple truths, straight talk. And if there's one thing he taught better than anyone else, it's how to live wisely, not just long. Now, if you've ever caught yourself wondering, how can I make the most of these years? Or am I still growing or just coasting? This is a conversation you need to hear, because we're going to walk through some of Charlie Munger's most powerful, practical life lessons that aren't just for boardrooms and billionaires, but for real life, especially your life. Let's dive in with something Charlie was famous for saying again and again: spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up. Now, that might sound simple, even a bit obvious, but don't let it fool you. In a world where everyone's chasing comfort and distraction, getting just a little wiser every day is like choosing to sharpen your mind instead of letting it rust. It means feeding your curiosity, asking better questions, reading something thought-provoking instead of just scrolling through headlines. Munger believed that wisdom wasn't something you suddenly got at a certain age. It was something you built like a fortress, brick by brick, moment by moment. And the best part? It's never too late to start stacking those bricks. He was a big fan of what he called a lattice work of mental models, fancy words for saying learn across disciplines. You don't have to become a mathematician or historian, but learning a little bit about how different parts of the world work, biology, psychology, economics, makes you a sharper thinker, a better decision maker, and a more interesting human being. Think of it like cross-training for your brain. And you don't need a classroom or a textbook. Pick up a new topic in a podcast, watch a documentary, try learning something your grandkids are into. If you keep adding to your mental toolbox, you stay sharp. And when you stay sharp, you stay alive in the best sense of the word. But Charlie wasn't just about brain power. He was equally fierce about attitude. One of his favorite warnings? Avoid self-pity like the plague. He didn't say this to be harsh. He said it because he knew how dangerous that trap can be. When things get tough, and they do, especially as we get older, it's easy to fall into that quiet whisper of, why me? But self-pity drains your energy. It shrinks your world. It keeps you stuck. Charlie's approach? Accept reality. Face it head on. And then choose to respond with strength, not surrender. That doesn't mean pretending everything's fine when it isn't. It means acknowledging the pain, the loss, the challenges, but not letting them become your identity. He believed in taking responsibility, even when life felt unfair, because that's where your power lives, right there in how you choose to respond. Let's be honest, by the time you're 60, you've seen some things. You've likely lost people, had health scares, maybe you retired, and found yourself wondering what's next. And that's why Charlie's advice hits even harder. This isn't about chasing youth. It's about embracing the wisdom you've earned and refusing to waste it by getting stuck in the past. And here's another big one he swore by: invert, always invert. What did he mean? It's a mental trick. When you want to solve a problem, don't just ask how to succeed. Ask how to fail, and then avoid those traps. So if you want to live well after 60, don't just ask, what should I do? Ask, what would mess this up for me? And then steer clear those things. What are the things that drain your joy, your health, your relationships? Maybe it's too much negativity. Maybe it's letting fear stop you from trying something new. Maybe it's sitting still when your body's begging you to move. Avoid those things like landmines. Charlie used this inversion mindset for everything, from investments to relationships to personal growth. And it works, because instead of getting overwhelmed with too many options, you just get really clear on what not to do. That clarity? It's freedom. And here's the beautiful part. It's not too late to start applying this. Whether you're 60, 70, or 90, you can still wake up tomorrow and say, what would a wise person do today? Or maybe even better, what would a foolish person do? And how can I avoid that? So let's take a moment. Imagine waking up with a quiet confidence, knowing you're still growing, still becoming, not because you're trying to keep up with anyone else, but because you respect your own potential too much to stop now. That's what Charlie was about. Quiet strength, steady growth, a refusal to waste a gift of time. Now that we've looked at how Charlie Munger approached wisdom, mindset, and avoiding self-pity, let's keep the momentum going, because the moment you start living each day with intention, instead of just passing time, everything shifts. And Charlie Munger believed that one of the most powerful ways to do that was by surrounding yourself with the right people. Spend each day with people you admire, he said. Not people who just make you laugh or agree with everything you say, but people who challenge you to be better, who hold up a mirror and help you see who you could still become. Think about that for a second. At this stage in life, your circle matters more than ever. The conversations you're having, the attitudes you're absorbing, the energy you're letting into your space. It all adds up. If your social world has gotten smaller with age, that's okay. You don't need a crowd. You need a few meaningful voices. People who uplift, not drain. Who encourage curiosity and gratitude, not gossip and complaints. Maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a grandchild, or someone from your church or community center. And if you haven't found that yet, don't wait. Reach out, join something new, take the lead in reconnecting. Charlie would tell you that good company isn't just pleasant, it's powerful. He also talked often about the danger of envy. Envy is a really stupid sin, he once said, because it's the only one you can never have any fun at. And he's right. When you're comparing yourself, your lifestyle, your health, your finances, to someone else's, you're only stealing your own peace. Envy turns your focus outward when the real gold is within you. Think of it this way. At 60, 70, or even 90, you've seen more sunsets than most people ever will. You felt more love, shed more tears, and likely made more mistakes. And that's not something to envy in others. It's something to honor in yourself. Charlie's point was that life isn't a scoreboard. The trick is to enjoy what you do have, instead of obsessing over what someone else might have. Now, that brings us to another lesson he held tightly. Know your circle of competence. That doesn't mean limit yourself. It means get clear about what you know well, and be humble enough to admit what you don't. In investing, Charlie and Warren Buffett were famous for saying they only bet on what they deeply understood. But the wisdom applies far beyond money. As we age, it's easy to feel pressure to have all the answers, especially when others come to you for advice. But one of the most freeing things you can do is say, I don't know enough about that to have a strong opinion. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Because here's what Charlie figured out early on. Confidence isn't about pretending, it's about clarity. And the clearer you are about what you know, the more powerful you become in navigating life. You stop wasting time chasing things that don't matter. You stop second-guessing your instincts, and you start making decisions from a place of calm strength. Let's take a real-world example. Let's say you're thinking about moving into a smaller home. You might not know every detail about the real estate market. That's okay. But maybe you do know what kind of environment brings you peace. What type of neighborhood suits your lifestyle. That's your circle of competence. Trust it. Learn just enough about the rest to make a sound decision. But lead from what you truly understand. And while we're talking about choices, let's not skip over one of Charlie's most underrated habits, patience. He didn't rush. He didn't chase trends. He understood that good things take time, whether it's investments, relationships, or personal growth. In a world that pushes instant everything, instant answers, instant success, instant gratification, Charlie was a master at stepping back, letting things unfold, letting ideas marinate. That kind of patience is powerful, especially in your 60s and beyond, when there's this false urgency around running out of time. But here's the thing, rushing rarely brings peace. And you're not in a race, you're in a season where reflection matters, where choices should be rooted, not rushed. And Charlie's approach reminds us that slow thinking often leads to better outcomes. So, if you're making a big decision about your health, your home, your legacy, give yourself room to breathe. Patience isn't about waiting passively, it's about choosing deliberately. That leads naturally to something else he preached, simplicity. Charlie didn't believe in complicating life unnecessarily. He and Buffett often said that some of the best investments they made were the ones they didn't make, because they avoided what they didn't understand. They said no more than they said yes. And that's a habit worth copying. You don't need more noise in your life, more stuff, more obligations. You need clarity. And that often means simplifying, not just your closet or calendar, but your expectations, your commitments, your goals. What actually brings you joy? What actually gives you energy? Do more of that. Let the rest go, because when you simplify, you create space for connection, for health, for creativity, for rest. And that space is precious. Just imagine what your days could feel like if they weren't packed with things you don't enjoy, or people who drain you, or habits that no longer serve you. That's not selfish. That's stewardship. That's honoring your time, your energy, your peace. Charlie didn't waste much. Not time, not words, not opportunity. He lived with intention. And every one of these habits, avoiding envy, embracing patience, choosing simplicity, they weren't just about living longer. They were about living wiser, living better. And that's the path we're walking here together. One small shift at a time, one decision made with care. One day lived with a little more grace. And as you begin to live with more grace, more clarity, and more purpose, just as Charlie did, it becomes easier to see which things are actually worth your time. Because here's something that doesn't get said enough. Not everything deserves your energy. And Charlie Munger was a master at conserving his. He talked often about the concept of opportunity cost. It's a term from economics, but it applies beautifully to life. It means every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So if you're saying yes to worry, you're saying no to peace. If you're saying yes to toxic conversations, you're saying no to better ones. If you're saying yes to being busy for the sake of being busy, you might be saying no to meaningful rest or real connection. Munger's whole philosophy was built on being brutally honest about where his time went. And that kind of honesty can be life-changing at any age, but especially now. Because when your calendar isn't crammed with obligations and noise, you get to actually live your days instead of just moving through them. That's why one of Charlie's greatest strengths wasn't just his intellect. It was his ability to say no. He once said, "The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. And the older we get, the more valuable that skill becomes. Not because you're cranky or closed off, but because you finally understand your worth. You know what drains you and what fills you. You've earned the right to protect your peace, and you don't need to apologize for it. So maybe it's saying no to another event you don't enjoy, or politely stepping back from people who bring more drama than joy. Maybe it's just saying no to rushing and giving yourself permission to slow down and be. Because no isn't always rejection. Sometimes it's redirection, and Charlie knew that. He also knew that life, real meaningful life, doesn't come from pretending to be someone else. One of his quiet, constant teachings was this: don't try to be clever, just try to be consistently not stupid. Again, that sounds funny at first, but there's real beauty in it. See, we live in a world obsessed with showing off, reinventing, chasing novelty. But Charlie valued something very different: steadiness. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He just kept making wise decisions, one after another, across decades. He didn't try to be the smartest guy in the room. He just tried not to be the most reckless one. And that's something we can all apply starting today. You don't have to do anything grand to live well. You just need to avoid the things that make life harder than it has to be. That's what Charlie meant by avoiding stupidity. Don't gamble what you can't afford to lose. Don't argue just to win. Don't ignore your health until it becomes a crisis. Don't wait to fix a relationship until it's too late. And if you're thinking, but I've made plenty of mistakes already, so what? So did Charlie. So does everyone. The key isn't avoiding every wrong turn. The key is learning from them, adapting, pivoting. That's another thing Charlie emphasized again and again: the ability to change your mind. He used to say, a year in which you don't change your mind on some big idea is a wasted year. Think about that. Most people pride themselves on being consistent, but Charlie, he prided himself on being open. If new evidence came in, he wasn't afraid to admit he was wrong. He'd change course in a heartbeat. And that kind of flexibility, mental, emotional, spiritual, is like a superpower in your later years. Because let's be honest, a lot of people get stuck. They cling to the same routines, the same beliefs, the same grudges, not because it serves them, but because it's familiar. But Charlie showed us something powerful, that growth doesn't stop at 60 or 70 or 90, that you can still evolve, still surprise yourself, still become more thoughtful, more generous, more wise. If you're willing to stay curious and humble, that means questioning old assumptions, trying new things, changing your mind if it makes sense to, saying, I used to think that, but now I see it differently. That's not weakness, that's maturity. And it's exactly the kind of inner flexibility that keeps you vibrant and alive. In many ways, this was Charlie's secret sauce, not just his brilliance, but his ability to keep learning, to keep adjusting, to keep becoming. And that's something every single one of us can do, no matter our age. You might not have the same energy you did at 30, but you have something much deeper, perspective, and with that comes power. The power to forgive, to let go, to start over, to mentor, to create, to enjoy. Charlie didn't waste his years trying to recapture youth. He spent them cultivating wisdom, strengthening relationships, making better decisions, living fully in his moment, not someone else's fantasy. And when you look at your own life, the choices you've made, the lessons you've earned, you start to realize something. You've already been walking this path. You've already survived hard things. You've already changed your mind, made better choices, protected your peace. Charlie's advice isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming more you, wiser, freer, and maybe just a little braver. Not because the road ahead is easy, but because you're finally walking with your eyes open, your heart steady, and your hands no longer clinging to what doesn't serve you. And the beauty of walking that road with your eyes wide open is that you start seeing things that used to pass you by. The quiet moments, the gentle lessons, the ways life is still teaching you, even now. That's something Charlie never lost. The belief that every day, no matter your age, holds something worth learning. He had a saying, the best armor you can have in life is a well-earned reputation for integrity. Now, that might sound like old-fashioned advice, but in truth, it's more relevant now than ever. Because in a world where trust feels hard to come by, and everyone's rushing to cut corners, integrity becomes your anchor. Not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. Integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest, owning your words, keeping your promises, especially to yourself. It means living in a way that lets you sleep at night, not because everything went right, but because you know you tried to do the right thing. And when you've got that, when your actions match your values, you don't need applause, you don't need approval. You get to carry something better than either of those: peace. So many people in their later years find themselves looking back, replaying old conversations, wondering what they could have done differently. And if that's you, here's what Charlie would probably tell you. Stop wasting time on regrets. Use that energy to live better now. Because the past is a teacher, not a prison. There's still room for joy, still room to repair what's broken, still room to say the thing you've held in for too long. And that's the gift of living wisely. You get to take everything you've learned and use it to shape these years into something rich, meaningful, even fun. Now, Charlie also believed that having the right incentives in life makes all the difference. And again, that doesn't just apply to business. It applies to how we build our habits, our relationships, even our health. If your goal is to stay active, make the incentive enjoyable. Maybe it's walking with a friend instead of just pacing a treadmill. Maybe it's listening to music or an audiobook while you do chores. Charlie would always say, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. So if something in your life feels off track, don't beat yourself up. Look at the reward system. Is there a better way to motivate yourself? Something that actually feels good, not forced? The same goes for connection. If you want more meaningful relationships, create incentives for those too. Reach out, make the first move, offer value. Not because you expect something in return, but because generosity is its own reward. Charlie once said, the best thing a human being can do is to help another human being know more. And he lived that, quietly, humbly, consistently. So maybe that's a final thread here. The idea that we're not here just to collect years. We're here to pass on what matters. And if you've lived long enough to have stories, lessons, hard-earned insights, share them with someone younger, with someone curious, or maybe with someone who just needs to be reminded that growing older doesn't mean growing obsolete. There's a strength in you that younger people haven't built yet, a perspective they haven't earned, a kind of grace that only comes from living through decades of change, challenge, and quiet triumphs. Charlie didn't waste that, and neither should you, because here's the truth most people miss. Aging isn't about loss, it's about leverage. You've already been through storms. You already know what matters and what doesn't. That clarity, it's priceless. So use it to laugh more, worry less, let go of things that don't serve you, hold tighter to the people who do. Try something new, not because you need to prove anything, but because curiosity doesn't retire. and neither does growth. If Charlie Munger could keep learning at 90, you can keep reinventing at 70, or 80, or 95. It's not about doing what you used to do. It's about discovering what you can do now with the wisdom you've earned and the time you still have. So, as you move forward, take this with you. You are not behind. You are not too late. And you are not done. You're seasoned, sharpened, smarter than you've ever been. And maybe, just maybe, you're standing at the very beginning of your most meaningful chapter yet. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. What part of Charlie's wisdom spoke to you most? What lesson are you carrying into the rest of your journey? If this video added value to your day, go ahead and tap the like button. It helps more than you think. And if you'd like to hear more insights on living fully, aging well, and thriving with wisdom, feel free to subscribe. There's so much more to explore together. Here's to living wisely, simply, and with deep joy, just like Charlie. Here's to living your best life at any age.